The relentless African sun beat down as I trekked through the Mara Conservancy in Kenya, camera at the ready. My goal was to capture the perfect wildlife shot for National Geographic's next issue. My name is Marcus Wright. With 15 years spent documenting animals in their natural habitats, I'm a seasoned wildlife photographer. I've tracked polar bears across Arctic ice, swum with great white sharks off the coast of South Africa, and photographed elusive jaguars during months in the Amazon rainforest. Yet nothing in all my experience could have prepared me for what I witnessed that sweltering May afternoon. For nearly 2 weeks, I had been tracking a pride of lions. It was a magnificent group, 2 adult males, 6 females, and 4 cubs. Documenting their family dynamics, hunting patterns, and the challenges they faced in an ecosystem under increasing human pressure was my assignment. The alpha male, a 6-year-old lion in his prime, was especially impressive. The local guides had named him Jabari. He had a magnificent dark mane and a distinctive scar across his right flank from a territorial dispute years before. That day, I'd set out before dawn with my guide, Keone, a native Maraean with an uncanny tracking ability and encyclopedic knowledge of animal behavior. We found the pride near a watering hole and spent the morning photographing their interactions. By midday, most had settled in the shade for their typical afternoon rest. But Jabari seemed unusually alert, his ears perked, his attention fixed on something in the distance. "He hears something we cannot," Keone whispered, his experienced eyes scanning the horizon. "Perhaps a distressed animal." We decided to follow at a safe distance as Jabari rose and began moving with purpose through the tall grass. Since lions typically hunt at dawn or dusk, this midday activity was unusual enough to pique our professional curiosity. After about 20 minutes, Jabari froze, his powerful body tensing as he lowered into a stalking position. "Strange," Keone muttered. "There is no prey animal I can see." Through my telephoto lens, I scanned the area ahead, expecting a gazelle or a young wildebeest separated from its herd. Instead, what came into focus sent a chill down my spine despite the oppressive heat. Partially hidden in the grass about 50 yards ahead was what looked like a shallow grave, with a human hand protruding from the disturbed earth. "My God," I gasped, lowering my camera. "Keone, look. Someone's buried there." Keone followed my gaze, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. "We must help," he said immediately, then hesitated, his eyes darting back to Jabari, who was now slowly approaching the grave. "But the lion?" We faced an impossible dilemma. Someone was possibly still alive, buried in that shallow grave. But between them and us stood one of nature's most efficient predators, a 400-pound carnivore capable of taking down animals twice its size. Our vehicle was parked nearly a kilometer back, where the terrain had become too rough to continue. "Call for backup on the radio," I urged Keone, never taking my eyes off Jabari and the grave. "We need to document this." As Keone made the calls, I continued photographing the unfolding scene, my professional instincts taking over despite the horror. What happened next defied everything I thought I knew about lion behavior. Jabari approached the grave cautiously, his nostrils flaring as he caught the human scent. But instead of displaying expected aggression, he began to paw gently at the loose soil around the exposed hand. It was almost as if he understood something was wrong, that whatever lay beneath didn't belong there. After a few minutes of careful digging, the lion had exposed more of what was clearly a human arm. Then, incredibly, the fingers twitched. "They're alive," I breathed, hardly believing it. "Whoever is buried there is still alive." The movement seemed to further intrigue Jabari, who continued his careful excavation. He used his massive paws with surprising delicacy to move soil away from what was now revealed as a man's arm and shoulder. The incongruity was mind-boggling. One of Africa's most feared predators was apparently working to unearth a buried human. About 15 minutes into this extraordinary scene, we heard the distant sound of approaching vehicles, the backup Keone had called for. The noise didn't deter Jabari, who had now exposed the upper torso and head of a man maybe in his 30s. Signs of beating and trauma were visible even from our position. As the vehicles drew closer, I expected Jabari to flee, as lions typically avoid human commotion. Instead, he continued his efforts until the man's entire upper body was free from the soil. Only when the first vehicle, a Land Rover carrying 3 Conservancy Rangers, came into view did Jabari finally retreat, though not in panic. He moved back about 30 yards and watched as the Rangers approached, weapons ready but not aimed directly at him. "Don't shoot," I called out as we approached from our position. The lion was helping him. The Rangers looked at me as if I'd lost my mind, but they held their fire as they rushed to the half-buried man. He was alive, but barely, dehydrated, beaten, and clearly left for dead by whoever had put him there. As the Rangers radioed for a medical evacuation and began first aid, Jabari remained where he was, watching the proceedings with what I can only describe as intent interest. More vehicles arrived, police, medical personnel, additional Rangers. Throughout the commotion, Jabari maintained his vigil, retreating only slightly if approached too closely, but refusing to leave entirely. It was behavior so atypical that even Keone, with his decades of experience, was left shaking his head in disbelief. "In all my years," he said quietly, "I have never seen anything like this." It is as if he knew this man needed help. The injured man was carefully extracted and placed on a stretcher. As they carried him to the medical vehicle, his eyes flickered open briefly. Through cracked lips, he whispered something only the nearest medic could hear. The medic looked startled, then glanced back at Jabari with disbelief. Later, we learned the man was David Karuki, a Kenyan environmental activist investigating reports of illegal poaching in the region. He had been ambushed 3 days earlier, beaten severely, and left to die in that shallow grave, a warning to others who might interfere with the lucrative illegal wildlife trade. But the truly extraordinary part was only beginning. As David was driven away for urgent care, Jabari did something that defied explanation. He began to follow the vehicle, maintaining a steady pace until they reached the main road nearly a kilometer away. "He is coming with us to the hospital," one ranger joked nervously, though there was awe in his voice. Of course, once the vehicles picked up speed on the main road, Jabari couldn't keep up and eventually turned back toward his territory. But the connection formed between the lion and the man he helped save was far from over. In fact, it was just the beginning of a relationship that would challenge our understanding of animal behavior and consciousness in ways none of us could have imagined. Reviewing my photographs that evening, documenting this incredible encounter frame by frame, I knew I had witnessed something unprecedented. What I didn't know was that the story of Jabari and David would continue to unfold in ways that would leave the scientific community struggling for explanations, and that I would find myself following this extraordinary narrative for years to come.